Smile. All right. Hey guys. So there's been a lot of interest in saturated fats lately, and I've been promising now for a while that we would talk about saturated fats. And so finally, we've got some time, albeit not the ideal time for a live, I think, but I'm happy that we have this, we'll have it recorded, and then we can go back and reference it. So we've both been out and had quite a few conversations lately, realizing that there still is a lot of fear around fat in general, and especially saturated fat. So we thought we'd jump on here and hopefully in 10 minutes we can cover why we shouldn't fear fat anymore. So let's just first start by just saying, there's three main types of fat. There's the polyunsaturated fat, monounsaturated fat, and saturated fat. And we're talking mostly about saturated fat today. So I think, what are the benefits? Let's just start there. What are the benefits of fat? You want to start, babe?
Well, first and foremost, I think the word fat is misnamed. When we think about particularly saturated fat, we should think energy. So when you see the word saturated fat, in your mind, try to think energy, a really good source of clean energy if eaten appropriately.
Yeah. So
saturated fat, as Haley was talking about, is just simply carbon and hydrogen all have single bonds. There's no double bonds. It's very stable. That's kind of what we're referring to.
Yeah.
The main benefits is energy. The biggest benefit.
And satiety. So we're talking about breakfast. So for example, you start your breakfast off and you eat eggs. You feel a lot different than if you start your breakfast off and eat cereal, Pop-Tarts, anything with sugar. So
as you were saying, fat. Also think about when you eat fat, you think full. Mm-hmm. When you eat sugar, think craving. Mm-hmm. So it's two simple things: fat, full; sugar, craving.
Yeah.
So you feel which one you want to do.
Yeah, and we focus a lot on fat because I think that it's a forgotten food sometimes, especially for our kids. So remember, their brain is growing and developing so rapidly, especially when they're younger, and 60% of the brain is fat. And so we really try to focus on providing healthy fats to our kids.
And also, if you think fat's very important for cell membranes. These little membranes around the cell provide the communication between each cell. And as you know, there's over 37 billion reactions per second in the human body. I mean, it's phenomenal per second. And fat is a critical component in cell membrane integrity. And a lot of the communication between cells occurs through this membrane that's composed of good fats. Yeah. And if the fats are clean and good, which we can talk about what a clean fat is, you're on your way to good health or better health.
Yeah, so let's break that down because there is a lot of fear around saturated fats in general. I feel like as a society, we've come to accept that monounsaturated fats, which are your olive oil, avocados, those are healthy and we're not as fearful of those. But when it comes to the saturated fats, things like animal fat, butter, lard, eggs, coconut oil, those are what scare a lot of people. And I think that they think that saturated fat equals you're going to have high cholesterol. Do you want to talk about that and how that's quite a myth too?
Yeah, well, a lot of the problems started back in the 70s. I won't go too much back into the details, but in the 70s, we were looking at what was happening to heart disease. And we had a president or two that was suffering from heart disease, Dwight Eisenhower, to go back into these years. The fear, they're trying to figure out what causes heart disease or heart attacks. And unfortunately, the attention was directed to fat being the culprit. It's a long story, but we now know it's more sugar and particularly sugar and simple sugars. However, but unfortunately the fats got the bad name.
Sure.
In reality, as you were saying, what was I going to...
Well, that it doesn't cause high cholesterol.
Right. Cholesterol, as we now know, there is no association with the food we take. This is a very important point. No food that you can ingest will affect your cholesterol levels. Mm-hmm. Also, cholesterol is an essential element.
We need cholesterol.
Yeah,
We've come to fear it, and I think it's a lot due to big pharma and those Lipitor and Crestor ads and just talking about how cholesterol is so bad, but we need cholesterol.
100%. Your body will make it. If you don't have enough cholesterol, your body will actually make it endogenously by the inside.
Yeah.
It's that important. It's important also for your sex hormones. It's important for all hormones in general, particularly so.
Yeah. Brain again. Yeah, so I think that's the big point there, is that the myth that saturated fat causes high cholesterol and that cholesterol is bad is really just, it's not true, and it just needs to be put to rest. And in fact, like Tarek was saying, is that a lot of these saturated fats, they actually burn the cleanest energy for us. So there's a polyunsaturated fat, which is what we find in a lot of seed oils, and that's the fat that kind of gets stored into our bodies. But if we're talking about like clean, efficient energy and giving our bodies that feeling of feeling full and not craving more sugar, having cravings, it's the saturated fats. Now, I think the biggest point to make here is that you want to focus on clean saturated fat. So do you want to cover that, Viv?
Essentially grass-fed, grass-finished.
Yeah.
So that 100%.
And why? Why is that?
Well,
So studies have shown actually that if you're talking grass-fed, grass-finished, anything, so meat or dairy, these are a lot higher in things like omega-3s, vitamin A, the good probiotics or good bacteria that exists in like the dairy. They're a lot higher in that versus a conventional meat and dairy.
You get a lot of omega-3. The omega-3 to the omega-6 ratio is way higher if you eat grass-fed
Sure.
or pasture-raised eggs or grass-fed meat. It's not so much the animal meat, it's what the animal ate itself. So we ingest what they ate as well as the animal. So that's really important to keep that in mind.
So on the flip side, if you're eating grass-fed, grass-finished as much as you can, you're getting more vitamins and healthy fats. Conversely, what you're getting with conventional dairy and conventional meat is likely antibiotics, hormones, steroids,
Grains.
and they're eating a diet full of grains, which is causing inflammation in their body, which is then passed to our body. So the big differentiator there is that saturated fat is really healthy for you. You want to pick a clean version of it.
And we even now are showing, many studies are starting to link the quality of saturated fat and the reduction of cardiac disease. And this again is still controversial, but however, if you look at the studies, more and more pointing out that you need to eat fat to be healthy. And also we were even talking about eating fat to even lose weight, actually.
Yeah. So I think that's what we'll end here. Again, we didn't want to keep it too long, but just wanted to get on and, even if it's convincing one person today, we feel like, that's little by little, is that, saturated fat, clean saturated fat is really great for our bodies. And unfortunately, the amount of fat, when we look at fat consumption, as a society, we're eating way more polyunsaturated fats nowadays,
seed oils,
which is in the seed oils, and they're in like pretty much anything processed, it seems like. But really, like being mindful of cutting back on those processed foods and the polyunsaturated fats, and instead focusing more on the saturated fats and even the monounsaturated fats too. But to end it out, what are benefits strictly when we're talking, healthy saturated fat? There's so many benefits, but do you want to name a few?
There's so many. Again, the idea of being full when you eat. So the feeling of fullness and satiety, clean energy, stronger bones.
Wait, let's go back. So feeling full when you eat. I think that's a big one because we're a society of snackers now. And why is that? There is some science saying that the more seed oils that we eat, because this type of fat is the fat getting stored in our bodies, it doesn't burn as energy. It actually makes us feel like more tired. And so therefore we're like, oh, we've got to eat more to like get more energy. So that's a big benefit of shifting from the seed oils, the polyunsaturated fat, to a saturated fat, is that you're eating and you feel full and you're like, I don't need to snack until my next meal.
And the big thing is the insulin, because out of all the macronutrients, which that includes protein and fat and carbohydrates, fat actually generates the lowest insulin response to zero insulin response, actually. As we get insulin is a response when we take in carbs or food. Our blood, the glucose gets into our blood, and insulin wants to get that all those nutrients into the cells. So it clears it out, maybe brings your blood sugar down low, and that's why you get a craving if you eat like a breakfast that's full of carbs.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Even like oatmeal, if I put a little maple syrup on it in the morning, I'm like, then just find myself like just wanting more sugary stuff throughout.
Yeah, within a couple hours, you get these waves, hunger spikes, and then you eat something, and then fat kind of, it burns very cleanly, gives you sustained energy. And that's why people who are on ketogenic diets, who focus mostly on fat, tend to like not be hungry. You're mostly on ketogenic.
And you have this amazing energy. And we're not saying ketogenic diets are for everyone.
Right.
Especially women. I think there's a lot of research saying that maybe like something more cyclical is beneficial. But yeah, exactly. And if you think about how that translates to our kids, setting them up for success in the morning. I think teachers, if they know this, and there's a lot of like teachers that do understand that, it's just like convincing parents to get on board, but like send your kid to school with a breakfast high in fat and clean protein. So what is that? I mean, it might be like grass-fed yogurt, cheese, eggs, obviously, sausage,
butter,
bacon, cooking in butter, avocado toast, the list goes on, but just, something that's more like nutrient dense and fatty. And that really like provides this like even energy for the kid during school. Number one, it keeps them full till lunch. And then number two, it's just like, they're not having that crazy sugar rush where they're like bouncing off the wall and they can't pay attention and, all that. So I think that is a key, is it translates to the kids obviously too.
And again, the focus. Remember, one of the key abilities for a child or an adult to learn is to be able to focus.
Yeah.
And if we can provide them the best chances and the best environment, starting with our food and of course our environment, they will more likely excel at school, more likely get better grades, more likely have more opportunities, and so forth and so on. So we can't understate the importance of clean fat and clean protein, especially in the morning before they go off to school, as well as a nice snack that's also like cheese or something fatty that really sustains it throughout the day.
Yeah.
You want to take a few questions or whatever?
Well, and so let me just think. I want to make sure we covered everything that we wanted to.
The fat primer.
Yeah. So, and I think just this is probably pretty obvious, but what are some good, healthy fat choices? And I think you see that a lot in butter. Oftentimes we're scared of butter. We think like, again, high cholesterol. And again, hopefully we've dispelled that. But like, cooking with butter, baking with butter, yogurt is such an easy one. And if you're having trouble like digesting dairy, yogurt's one of the easiest dairies to digest. Again, you want to focus on plain and get the full fat yogurt. And even if you sprinkle like a little bit of honey or some fruit on there, I mean, that's how the kids love it. And I don't see anything wrong with that. You're still getting that nice healthy fat. Sausage and bacon in the morning, eggs. I mean, I would do eggs every single day with the kids if we could, and especially focusing on that cholesterol part, the yolk, which contains the most vitamins and minerals, and again, like the most fat. So eggs are a good one.
Nature's multivitamin. So if you can think about the yolk as like a multivitamin, if you can, that's the best way to, it's the most bioavailable, so your body will extract all those nutrients.
Yeah. Raw milk is another good one. We've been like kind of on this kick now for about 6 months and just noticed really big differences. There is so much beneficial bacteria and vitamin D, and the main composition of raw milk is saturated fat. So you're getting a lot of that good, healthy energy fat. What else am I missing, babe? I think and then coconut oil. Coconut oil is a really great way to get saturated fat into your diet. We use that to cook a lot with. The main thing you want to focus on is raw, organic, and unrefined coconut oil. But that is mostly saturated fat. That is associated with lots of like really clean energy for the body. So we've covered the sources. You want to give one more plug as to why cholesterol isn't bad and why saturated fat is not bad for you guys.
Yeah, again, like we said, cholesterol is essential. We will die without cholesterol. It serves as structural components in our membranes. It makes those things fluid or stiff, which again affects cell signaling and all these things that go along. There are trillions of cells. Also, too, that it's important for our hormones, or for example, our sex hormones. It's responsible for estrogen and testosterone. and on and on. The list goes on. Cholesterol is absolutely essential. And if you have too low of a cholesterol level, you actually have a higher source of morbidity and heart disease.
Well, and so I think that's the last point we should end on there with cholesterol is, like, really, if you think about it, when that fat is bad craze started years and years and years ago, you saw all of a sudden this huge shift to like low fat foods, to like cutting out fats. And I don't think there's almost a direct correlation of the amount of dementia, Alzheimer's, and just these
obesity.
Obesity too, but we're talking like the brain, like all these cognitive function declines because our brain needs cholesterol and it needs fat. So if you're going to cut something out, rather than cutting out saturated fat, really focus on cutting out sugar as much as you can, and processed foods that contain seed oils. The seed oils are the polyunsaturated fat that they don't burn as clean energy. Rather, they get stored in our fat and cause us to become more fat. So cut out the processed foods and cut out the sugars, but focus more on the healthy fats and clean proteins, and of course, fresh fruit, fresh veggies. And notice the difference in your energy, the way you think, the way your skin looks, the way, the weight just kind of falls off if that's a focus.
Yeah, I think, and just to summarize it, a lot of great points. Thank you. I mean, it was just, I think she's the doctor. So in general here, I think the biggest thing to keep in mind is fat is energy. Mm-hmm. Fat will satisfy you. Mm-hmm. And sugar and carbohydrates leads to cravings. If you combine the fat and the carbs together, that can be a recipe for a lot of problems. So we want to try to eat clean fats. Again, a little bit of, if you're going to bake, use the best ingredients. It's okay to have desserts here and there, but fat and sugar together can be a recipe for a disaster. It tricks your brain to not give those full signals. So again, it's extremely important to understand that fat itself will lead to satiety, will lead to fullness, satisfaction.
Yeah, and I think to that point, it's like when you're making meals and you're, giving your kiddos breakfast, or if you're just designing a dinner or whatever, is focus on healthy fats, clean proteins, and add the veggies, because those are all complementary to the fat. It's when you start adding in the sugars, even though I did say put honey in your yogurt, which I don't think there's but it's more of like the processed sugars with the processed fats is a real recipe for disaster.
And what you just had, another big point is just whole nutrient dense foods, what your great grandma ate, or what if we can stay away from the seed oils and the processed. Well, again, if you stay away from processed foods, you'll automatically stay away from seed oils and simple sugars and inflammatory sugars and seed oils that cause the early onset dementia. It causes metabolic syndrome, diabetes, obesity, mental fog, fatigue. So it's just a matter of, we just got to be aware of these things and then make better choices. I think in the end of the day, I think our superpower is the ability to change, to make these changes. Mm-hmm. We just need to be aware. You can't make a change without being aware.
Yeah, well said. Yeah. So I think we'll leave you with fat is actually your friend. Don't be scared of saturated fat. We encourage you guys to give it a try. Start to swipe out the processed foods and instead include more of those. Fat is flavor too.
Oh yeah.
I started enjoying.
Flavor.
I mean, that's what I was telling my dad the other day. It's like, he's like really scared of fat. It's like that's where all the flavor in the food is. So enjoy the healthy fats and just start to notice how your body changes.
Well, it's interesting. If you want to go a little bit of history, the Israelites were when they did something wrong, actually fat was prohibited upon them. So it was such
a punishment.
It was a punishment.
No fat for you.
Yeah, so that it's interesting. So there's a lot of history to fat. There, our great grandparents used to not be afraid of fat whatsoever. It is, unfortunately,
and there was not like a lot of obesity back then.
Oh, I mean, if you look at the 60s and 70s, go to the beach, you pictures of people. There's actually obesity was a rare thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you want to ask questions, or do you want to?
Yeah. So I guess if there's any questions, but we did want to just like kind of pop on real quick and then keep it under a certain amount of time so that it was like doable to just sit and watch the video. The other thing that we wanted to quickly reference is that if you want more information about fats, we have a couple of really good resources on our website. So if you go to mysuperherofoods.com, up in the top there's a resource tab, and under there's a whole like everything you want to know about fats galore. So if you really want to dive in, we encourage you to just kind of look over that. And the other thing
It's all free.
is, it's all free. The other thing is we have a cooking guide. So we often get some questions around like, what do we cook with? And what about like avocado oil, and can you use refined avocado oil and all that, like all those little nuances. We have like a 30-page, it sounds intimidating, it's not like, there's lots of visuals on there too, but a cooking guide that kind of goes into what oils you should use when you're cooking, how the temperatures that you should use, because as we just talked about, there's so many benefits in fat, so let's cook with it the right way so that we don't destroy those molecules and instead get all of that goodness. So that's on our website too, and it's under, I don't know the exact tab, but if you just go to search and you type in cooking oil guide or just cooking oil, it'll come right up. It's a free download.
Could you put it in the description below?
Yeah, and I'll put it in the description below too.
Yeah.
So thank you guys. We'll say it one more time. Fat is your friend. Don't be scared of saturated fat. And we would love to hear your successes. So if you have like really started to incorporate the saturated fat back into your diet, we'd love to, hear your story, how you feel, and all the benefits that you've come across. So any final words, babe?
I think you did it very well. Like I said, maybe we'll take one question.
Let's see.
If anybody's got a question, we'll take one question.
All right. Does anyone have a question for us? Let's see. Lots of.
I think the best way to learn is through question and answers. I think that's.
Let's see.
If no one has a question, we'll end it.
Yeah, I think we covered everything. A lot of people submitted their questions in advance, and I think we've covered it all. So I think we're good.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Until next time.
Bye.
Now if we can turn this off. Oh my gosh. Are you sure you want to end?